All right, welcome to Waking the Kraken. I'm Wes Potts.
And I'm Alex Kahneman.
And today we have a special guest. We have, from Fairwayavenue, we have Skyler.
Yeah.
Swiveling the mic over. Hey, my name is Skyler. I also go by Fairwayavenue, kind of a recording artist, and feebly try to make music and sing into a microphone. Hope it doesn't turn out bad.
All right. Well, you heard, we mentioned Skyler's album, what was it, like 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah, a few episodes
ago.
Yeah.
So Skyler, I know that, like, when I talked to you last up, which was a couple years ago, you were doing filmmaking stuff, I think. Like, you were at OTC and doing filmmaking stuff and everything like that. What made you want to jump into the realm of music from doing that kind of stuff?
I think I've always been kind of a person who's focused a lot on aesthetic.
Yeah.
Be it visual or auditory. And I've always kind of wanted a creative channel to express whatever aesthetic was coming to my mind. When you work with, TV, or if you work with visual type of stuff, you work with a lot of people, and sometimes people are flaky, sometimes people are too ambitious in this direction, to that kind of thing. And maybe I'm kind of like a control freak in that way, and so the aesthetic kind of gets lost in my head. But whereas with music, if I'm doing this one thing, then I have that specific control over that aesthetic. And if I'm collaborating with somebody else, then it's a mutual collaboration. It's more of a tight knit kind of thing. So it's more just a way of expressing that aesthetic.
Okay. Yeah. Fairwayavenue, it's all one long word. It's not just like two. What came up with the name for that? Like, what was your kind of personal take on that? Why?
Really, really simple. It's where I live.
Okay.
So it was super simple. It's just a street name.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff went down there, and it holds kind of a value to me.
Mm-hmm. And I know that I reviewed your album on the podcast and stuff like that, but I was just curious. Every artist has a take on what their particular media means to them, kind of thing, like, or how they classify their media. What is it? What would you describe Fairwayavenue as? Like, if you were to describe it to someone, be like, I make this, it's kind of like this genre, or it's these feelings or these emotions put behind it.
I've been compared to James Blake a lot.
Okay.
So kind of an ambient, kind of R&B kind of feel to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's basically just sad white boy R&B. So that's about all I can really explain it as.
Yeah. What kind of influence was that one of your influences as well? James Blake? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. No, he's got a really cool aesthetic to him. But I think one of I've got like an entire playlist on Spotify that I listen to kind of get me psyched for it. But like Black. Yeah. 6 LACK. Black. Tank. A lot of Drake, because I'm that person. That kind of thing.
Are you dancing on the side of the car? Like, is that
like Kiki, do you love me? Yeah, absolutely. That's me.
You're the super Drake fan.
I actually put my children at risk just so I could get out of my dad van. Like, Kiki, do you? Yeah.
One of them's running alongside you. Like, how did you get out of your car seat?
Exactly. I'm pissed at that point. Yeah, for real.
That's awesome. Like, so. You told me before we started doing this, you haven't played any shows and stuff like that because you're worried about looking like karaoke.
Yeah, all I've got are just kind of the digital tracks and things like that. I've gotten some things together that if I wanted to, I'm sure I could, do it live. But I'm just kind of weirded out by how that might look. It might look like karaoke, like Korean karaoke. Which is fine. That's definitely my style.
Especially if you have the Korean at the bottom that's translating to everything that you say.
That's how I do it. Is I actually write it in English first, put it through Google Translate Korean, and then translate it back.
That's even better. I love that idea. That's a visual idea for you now. For whenever you decide to make music videos, it just always has Korean at the bottom.
It's got like subtitles.
You just blow up in Seoul. You're the whole reason that North Korea falls and stuff like that. They're like, oh, this is really resonating with me. How did it get smuggled over the border?
I mean, I don't see an issue with that. I'd be doing better than Trump would be doing, so,
Then you could take all the power, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then I am the power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a problem.
All right, well, Alex, I'm gonna let you take over now.
Ooh, perfect. All right, so I actually just listened to most of the album today again,
okay.
just to kind of give myself like a better context of where to talk about it from. And like you said, James Blake was a big influence on you. Like, who else would you say is like a big influence on your writing style, and how do you think they came across in the album?
In terms of my writing style, I don't really know. I've been writing poetry and stuff like that for a long time, and I kind of try to translate some of that over to what I was doing with this. But I don't know. A lot of modern kind of R&B artists definitely influenced it.
Right on. Yeah, you can definitely feel that for sure. I myself heard a lot of like things that I'm familiar with from like Odd Future, with the kind of like they're willing to push you into a direction that might not be comfortable.
Yeah.
And so like that was just something that I picked up on. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Team Sesh, but you kind of have a similar like chilled out kind of rap vibe that whole kind of group of guys has, which I think is cool.
Word, that's awesome.
Yeah. And my other questions were like, do you do all of your own production? Like, you do it all yourself?
Yes, except for one song that is not on the album. It's Trap Jesus.
Okay.
Which is also on Spotify. Actually, a friend of mine, you might know him, Paul Crosby.
Yeah, he knows it too.
Yeah.
Paul Crosby.
I'm very familiar. Yeah.
He actually made that beat, and then I produced the vocals and mixed it and stuff like that. And it was really, really good. And it's he's an excellent musician himself.
Yeah, he really is. So I mean, like that's kind of cool, because I did listen to that track, and like I actually made a couple comments about how I was really interested in how like he used the sub in that song. Mm-hmm. Like that one felt so dramatically different from the album.
Yeah. That
I was like, this can't have just been him this time.
No.
Unless your brain just can like switch that quickly from like, I don't know. It's kind of cool to me.
No, that was definitely Paul. He like I said, he's a fantastic musician, and to my knowledge, that was him just trying it out.
Yeah.
So whenever he made that, it was, and I heard it, I was like, wow, like this is good just for something that he just popped off with.
Yeah, and it's a really fun track. I actually really enjoy listening to it. With a super slow beat, like that he has kind of set up with the like kind of sporadic hi-hats.
Yeah.
Like it gives your voice like all of this like commanding space, and like I don't know, it was that one like just like really stands out from the album. Like it definitely feels different, which I appreciate a lot.
Yeah.
I hate hearing releases sound the same over and over again, you know?
That's true. Yeah, you then it's just stagnant, and there's no evolution to it, and you're just listening to the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. One of my other questions is how do you build a track? Like for example, like I really like the song Legs a lot. Mm-hmm. Like you don't have to like go into super detail, but what's like the basic process for like how that song like kind of came into being?
I use a lot of samples, and then I build. So if I'll cruise and kind of listen to some samples and see what kind of what I feel from it, and then I'll create a loop from that, and then from that point, depending on what it is that I'm getting from that loop, I'll go ahead and start building the drums to it.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the bass to it.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just word salad at first when it comes to lyrics, stuff like that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense or anything, and I'm just kind of spewing off nonsense. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to put it to where it's at in the song and what I feel for that point. And if I like that, then it's like, okay, what can I write that actually fits this? What am I feeling right now? And it's at that point that it kind of comes together a little bit more cohesively. And I wish I could say that I write everything linear,
yeah,
and just kind of go from that point. But sometimes I'll get stuck at like a particular point in the song,
yeah, and
I'll master the hell out of it, or I'll put on effects here, or I'll do this here, or I'll stutter this, or I'll chop this, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much how it goes.
Right on. Yeah. So you could almost say like you start off with like a generalized idea, and you kind of like just keep refining it until you're with somewhere you're happy with, like, or would you say that like you said non-linear, so like are you thinking about the whole track when you go into it, or are you kind of like letting it take you where it takes you?
It's very much the latter. Just kind of letting it take me where it takes me.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's not like, yeah, it's a kind of a very chaotic process.
No, that's for sure.
It's definitely not something that I push too heavily into,
Yeah. All right. Another. How long have you been like singing and doing like electronic production?
The electronic production part. I mean, just at least with music, it's been since October.
Okay.
It hasn't been a too terribly long time. I used to do some things when I was in high school, actually.
Yeah.
Some really campy, trashy electronica stuff. I can't remember what it was called, like something Clockwork. It was something really, really edgy. But I did everything with FL Studio. I actually still do everything with FL Studio.
I actually had a thought that you may have done that. I could definitely hear the gross beat in there somewhere.
There probably was. But I don't know. So it's kind of been off and on throughout my life.
Right on. That's super cool. Body is what it's called.
Yeah.
And the tracks are mind, hands, heart, head, legs, and stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like just off of that, I do have one question about it. Like where did the inspiration for that came from? Because that's a pretty big one. Like that's like right off the bat. Like it's called Body, and all the tracks are about body parts, like different body parts.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too deep. I got back in October. I got cheated on, and that really screws with a person's sense of their self.
Absolutely.
Their body as a whole, and that's kind of where I kind of took that from in terms of trying to rediscover who I was as a person, both physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the tracks play into that, and a lot of tracks kind of coexist with how how things kind of churn up here, how things kind of, like, I'm trying to think of a way. It comes to describe my evolution as a person since things kind of went down.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely like just right off the bat, mind. You do something that I think is really interesting, and I don't know if you intended to do it, but like your kind of flowing and meandering vocal style and this kind of scale that you've picked to proceed through the whole album, that you put your melodies in, it reminds me of that kind of like Indian call to prayer that you hear and like that you would hear in like mosques, where they're like over the loudspeaker calling everyone to come. It's like very similar to that style of singing, and I was wondering if that played into it at all.
It actually really was.
That's really cool.
It's really cool that you bring that up, especially in mind towards the end of it. That was something that came to mind, and no pun intended. That's bad.
Did we get that on camera?
No, don't. No,
we sure did.
Edit that out immediately. It was definitely something that I had thought of, because I really like the way those sound, and I know. I hope that's not offensive in any capacity.
No.
To my knowledge, I know that's not supposed to be considered music, but there's a musicality to it that I really enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, you can't like just ignore what musical elements it has just because it's not supposed to be considered musical.
You yourself in your video, you yourself said that like, what is music? It's just organized sound.
Right.
So like in that example, like anything could technically become music, and
right.
So I mean, even with the call to prayer kind of thing, it may not be considered music in like an Islamic kind of manner, or it's not supposed to be music, but it has a collective sound that is organized, which thus makes it's like your fan analogy that you had on it.
Totally. Yeah. So let's move on to Hands. So I felt like this track, the whole was like delay on feature. Like you get introduced to like that really heavy kind of delay effect on your voice, which ends up creating this like really dense background texture that kind of fills in a lot of the space that I think is there, which makes it to where you didn't have to use quite as many like synths and things to kind of to kind of build up the soundscape, which I thought was actually a really cool use of delay. Like most of the time it's just an effect and not necessarily like such a driving force. Right.
I think I wanted to use that to create more kind of a sensual space.
Yeah.
Not for it to be, I didn't want it to be overrun with, I didn't want it to be overrun with a lot of noise.
Yeah.
The song itself is about sex.
Yeah.
In a way, more or less just kind of a distancing in terms of emotional, that kind of thing. and I didn't want there to be a lot of distraction in it, so I definitely see what you're saying, and I appreciate that, because that's definitely a concept up there.
Wonderful. Okay, so Heart Unintelligible is probably my favorite like space sound space you designed out of the whole album.
I think that's my favorite song on the album, actually.
Yeah.
Heart is?
That was the one that kind of like, I heard that one first, and then it gripped me, and then like that was kind of where I just went from there.
That is actually a weirdly old one. I did. I don't want to rap per se.
Yeah.
So I try to like stay away from it.
Yeah.
But I did rap in that, but I also tried to make it to where it was unintelligible.
Right.
A lot of the stuff that I was saying in it was really dark, and some kind of I don't know, some worrisome kind of concepts in it. So I it wasn't something I really was willing to share, but I wanted to share nonetheless. So it was my. I was afraid it was too Suicide Boys-esque. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Suicide Boys.
Yeah, I haven't.
What I honestly really liked was that like I just really enjoyed like the fact that it starts off with this super atmospheric space that's kind of relaxing at first and a little eerie, but mostly just kind of like, oh, okay, well, this is calm. And then you get these drums that just kind of come in, and like that sub sound, like having it pan kind of off to one side, I feel like was really smart, because it made this space that the rap kind of takes off to the right in the head. Like it makes it to where like, oh yeah, like this isn't about what he's saying. It's about how he's saying it. And the sounds that are happening, which I really like about rap, and I think a lot of people overlook. And because you can kind of hear some of the things you're saying, it's kind of like, what the fuck did he say? Yeah. But it fits the vibe of the track so much. And like I feel like the filter you use that has all the different layers on your voice and doing the pitch down and pitched up and like just all around you, like it really adds this kind of layer of like what I would consider like a Tyler the Creator kind of like shock rap, kind of like the horror vibe.
Yeah.
Where that just really struck me whenever I heard it.
Yeah. That song was definitely made. It was definitely one to just be heard and not so much interpreted. And it was definitely built to be a soundscape versus a kind of it's no Bob Dylan.
We don't need another Bob Dylan, though.
No, that's true.
I think the thing that I really liked about Heart was, or the thing that it felt for me was, you have that bit of that rumble on the bass line, and or like the kind of like bumping kind of thing where it like kind of rattles and stuff. It almost kind of felt like a murmur, almost like your whole album is, like I said, haunting. I think the last time we talked about it and stuff like that. But that one in particular for me, and I had talked to you already about kind of things that have been going on in your life and stuff like that. One felt the most off of what I had felt Skyler was feeling the last time I talked to him. Yeah. But the other thing about it was it kind of did feel almost like a bit of a death in itself, like where it was kind of like.
It definitely was. I mean, it was. Like I said, I don't think I'd ever released them, but I mean, you can probably hear some of them in it. It was definitely a dark moment, and it was supposed to be a really, really dark song, and I think I had it as Heart because that's basically at the core of what I was feeling was a lot of, I mean, just in terms of themes, was a lot of self-doubt, a lot of blaming myself for things that happened, and justification for certain things, and just the battle and the kind of struggles that come in with that. And I wanted something to kind of coalesce around that.
Right.
And that's definitely where that came from.
All right. Once again, change places. Just move it to the right.
All right. So let's move on to Legs.
Okay.
I would say like out of all of the tracks on the that you have on Spotify, this is the one that felt the most like fully fleshed out and like impactful to me.
Really?
Yeah. Basically, I think the intro synth that you have, that's like, I couldn't figure out quite exactly what you were doing, but it was like a kind of like an electric piano, almost like organ-y type of sound. And I felt like over the top you had this like bell that was kind of skittish.
Okay.
But I don't know, but it was just it was drastically different from everything else you had done so far.
It was actually the last song that I made.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like everything has this kind of like same kind of dreamy atmospheric sound, and then this one you finally start getting the instruments playing a really consistent rhythm, just like even with the chords, and I just thought that made this track really stick out right away and made me like want to listen to it more. And And I even wrote down here that like the way you bring in the voice with the reverse echo at first, it like makes it just as creepy as all of the other tracks without doing anything really harmonically that's creepy, which I thought was really unique as well. Like I'd never really heard a texture be creepy on its own, and I thought that was amazing. Like were you trying to go for kind of like that eerie sound still with that?
I mean, eerie is a really cool takeaway from that. I mostly I was wanting it to convey kind of empty, hollow.
Yeah.
One voice alone in a room where it's all that's all there is. It's just that one. So the fact that the takeaway is creepy is actually really cool. Because I mean, in a way, that sensation is creepy.
Yeah.
You know, kind of being alone like that.
I almost described it as it's like got that same kind of like mystical eeriness that you get from like a fantasy villain. Like when you look at him, you like in a movie or something, you know that like just from looking at Sauron that he's like kind of evil and he makes you uncomfortable.
Wait, he's a bad guy?
He's the big bad.
He's the bad guy? Oh my god.
Sorry about
Something I just
my hero.
realized something about that movie. Things are making so much more sense now.
But yeah, it was like eerie in a way that was like almost undescribable, which kind of gives you that same sort of like mystical kind of feeling. So like that track really like that's why it really grabs me, is it just really feels I don't know, like you achieved something that I'd never heard before.
There was actually a scream at the end of that song, which is a weird thing. I mean, like nobody knows it's a scream because I put some heavy effects on it and kind of made it like layered in there. But I used to do kind of metal vocals, that kind of thing.
Totally.
And I put one in there just because. And I thought about putting some in Heart as well, but I realized that's really not the aesthetic I wanted to go with. But
I feel you.
I felt that would work for towards the end of it.
All right. So the last track that you got on here is Stomach. So at this point, like I feel like when you listen to the album, the pitch down voice motif is finally like a motif. Like it's a consistent idea. Like I feel like re-pitching of your voice is kind of part of the style of the album. I think that's one of the main like features that you bring onto it, because like the voice so far has been like clearly the main focus of each track. I think I definitely feel that the beats kind of are establishing as like an emotional like feeling, and then the lyrics are really like kind of elaborating on what the music's already saying.
Right.
And so you end up with this like really kind of vocal centric album that's just got lots of different effects, and then that pitch down octave voice, especially doing on that track like kind of Stomach, it does more like mantric lines, like Gregorian chant.
It was actually, that one was a loop. It was somebody who was singing. I don't know the actual name of the language. Indian.
Urdu? Was it Hindi?
I don't know. I want to say it's Hindi, given where this guy is from, but but I might be completely wrong, so I apologize. It was actually that, and then pitched down way low, and then manipulated it a bit, put in the background. To kind of, because I liked the way it felt, and given what he was saying, to my knowledge, it was something very romantic.
Yeah.
It seemed fitting to pervert that a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I like that idea. You also like this track, like the drums stick out, like they like punch you in the face and kind of come out of nowhere. Which I felt like was also really nice, because like you're like ending the album with like the most aggressive percussion track that you have.
Yeah.
And like, was that like intended?
Yeah. It was. Those lines in specific were a bit biting. As a bit of my aggression, but it kind of comes from a lot of how I feel. Like the pit of your stomach, it kind of that sick churn, that twist of sadness plus anger, or something. You'll be the cancer, I'll be the cure. I'll be there maybe, but you'll be for sure.
Yeah.
Basically, that was it was meant to be kind of, like I said, biting.
Yeah.
About how I viewed her, but also how I viewed myself. Because not necessarily I viewed myself to be the cure, the good guy, by any stretch of imagination, but rather I'm just a concept and I might not be there later. That kind of thing.
Totally. That's awesome, dude. I feel like you like really succeeded in like making an album that's worth listening to, like, or an EP rather, or whatever you want to call it. Like I feel like you have a lot of music that like only I could see the Blake reference and people saying that it's similar to that, but I don't feel like you're doing something that is like you could describe as, oh, he's just being James Blake.
Right.
You know, like you're definitely doing something that I think is interesting, and you're approaching your music production with, you know, a sort of creative style that I feel like is kind of really fresh right now. Like a lot of people, you know, approach music one of two ways. There's either you learn how to make beats and you make beats now, or go to school for it and you learn how to write like classical music. But like what you're doing is something that it is a little bit more than that. You're really trying to flesh out an entire concept and an idea into sound, and like it's very clear. Like it's not something that I feel like a lot of people would just let kind of go under their radar just because it was uncomfortable, because it sounds very much like it has a purpose, and I think that's like a big reason why I liked it so much.
Obviously this was a very emotional piece for you to make and stuff like that, but if you had to peg one of the particular songs as being, I guess, in a way your favorite, even though it does deal with such a dark subject and stuff like that, what was the one that you felt the most passion or the most relieved whenever you were done with, the one that you're like, okay, this is my favorite on this piece?
Wow.
I mean, they're all like your children. You all love every one of them. I get it. You put a lot of, thought and energy behind it. But yeah, I just didn't know if there was a particular one or not.
I think Stomach is one that I put a lot of heft into.
Yeah.
Like, I am not the man I was, nor the man I want to be. That kind of thing. A lot of that explained a lot of how I felt. That one kind of encompassed a lot of emotions, I feel like. But also, Legs was definitely one that I felt really compelled to. A lot of stages of grief, bargaining, I think, put into it too.
Right. And my next question is, you say that you collaborated with Paul and stuff like that on one song. Is there any other artist that you personally know or you want to know in the future and stuff like that you would want to do a collaboration for Fairwayavenue with? Like anyone? Yeah, like anyone.
Dude, if I had it my way, I would definitely collaborate with like somebody like Black.
Yeah,
for sure. Like I don't even know how that would work. Just given I know that we sound super different, but I would be about that.
Yeah, just to kind of blend and see how it would like come out, kind of thing and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, no, that's awesome. That was kind of. I mean, there's so many times that people are like, I wish I could work with this person, kind of thing, and so I was just curious on which one that would be.
Yeah, that would definitely be him. That dude's sound is smooth.
Yeah.
I would never get there. That's never something I would get to.
I don't know. I mean, like you kind of in my opinion, you kind of knocked it out of the park on an EP. So, like, I mean, you got some momentum going behind you. So I think I'm interested to see where else Fairwayavenue goes.
Actually, just released a couple new songs, not on Spotify. I put it on SoundCloud, just because I don't know, it seemed like a thing to do. But I'll probably put it on Spotify too. 2 songs. One is called I Am the Monster That You Always Thought I Was, and the second one was called Pouring Ourselves a Drink. So I like the production quality of those.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how far I can expand. I don't know where I'm.
Well, we'll try to get a link for that as well on the podcast and stuff like that. So
cool. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I mean, is there anything else that you'd like to ask before? I reckon we're done.
I've run through all my questions.
That's cool. Skyler, once again, thank you for joining us. That's a lot of handshakes at one moment. As always, a pleasure. It was good seeing you again after so many years and stuff like that, and I'm glad you came on the show.
Yeah, it's been a really good time. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, no, I definitely did. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for making me feel so welcome here. That was really awesome.
Yeah. Well, once again, everyone, thank you for joining us for Waking the Kraken. As always, I'm Wes Potts.
And I'm Alex Kahneman.
Have a good one.
Peace. Okay, goodbye.